Stephanie, as Bart said, Secretary of Home Affairs. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. You and your department support this dialogue so very well. The title of the session, as Bart said, Leadership in an Insecure World, I think that's particularly important because if we think just back not much more than 10 years ago, the world looked and felt a lot safer. If we just take 2013 as a snapshot, Al-Qaeda seemed defeated, ISIS didn't exist, we didn't know about it, Russia hadn't invaded Crimea, Australia was signing a free trade agreement with China. Your department didn't even exist. So there seemed to be a perception of relative safety. Not much more than a decade or so on, you're in charge of Australia's national security policy now in an insecure world. We have focused this morning a lot about risk and safety and technology. Your role in organisation is so important. So as Secretary of this department, Stephanie, how do you build and lead an organisation so that it can manage and respond to these challenges, and not just one challenge at a time, but many?
Thank you, Justin, and it's fantastic to be here with you all today. It's actually heartening to know that there are so many people who care about the issues that face us and who are investing their time and effort to come and talk about them and learn about them and share your expertise and knowledge. I think, Justin, the place I would start is just to reflect very quickly on the nature of the role. And it's very easy for us to talk about how exciting and complex and positive the role that we play in Home Affairs is. But you're right, there actually are very grave responsibilities that come with this portfolio. The Minister has a nice way of capturing it by saying Australians need to be safe and they need to feel safe. And it sounds simple, but within that catchphrase is a very profound responsibility that he carries as Minister, that we carry as the department prosecuting that agenda. And so I see my primary responsibility as ensuring that the department has the capability to actually respond to the challenges you outline now and into the future. And to make sure that that capability is actually optimal, because when we are responding to these threats, we can't be doing it in a second-rate way. We have to have absolutely the best people, the best capability. When I came into the role, the Public Service Commission was just launching a capability review on the department. And at the time, I thought, oh, this is too much at the very start of this adventure. But in fact, it gave us a really important blueprint for the kind of capability we needed to build. And I just want to quickly reflect on what it found, because it's a good backdrop for what we've done since then. So it found committed, passionate people. It found innovative, forward-leaning national security thinking, which is a delight in this context, and a can-do, action-oriented culture, which Bart referred to before. But the list of things that we needed to work on to position ourselves to meet the challenges that were articulated was, I think, about 5 times as long as that list. And I've just picked out a few. So unity within the portfolio and within the organisation, foresighting capability, leadership, purpose and strategic direction, collaboration, all pretty fundamental capabilities that needed to be built if we were going to operate optimally. And so our response to that was the transformation agenda that Bart referred to briefly in his introduction. And there are 3 aspects which are all equally important because they depend on each other to build that that capability. The first is exemplary leadership. We can have really smart people and great ideas, but if we're not creating an environment in which every person can achieve their full potential, every person can give of their best, then we're not going to deliver the safety and security that Australians deserve from us. The second pillar was about a game-changing agenda. And in big organisations, I grew up in defence. I spent my first 23 years as a public servant in firstly what was then Defence Signals Directorate, now ASD, and then in international policy. And I know in big organisations, it can be really hard to make a difference, that there can be a lot of work that's done that is work for work's sake. And I was determined that we wouldn't waste one opportunity, one moment in Home Affairs by not focusing on how is what we're doing every day delivering against the agenda that we set. And then finally, collaboration. One of the big findings of the capability review was that we weren't operating in a unified way internally, but perhaps more importantly, we had a lot of work to do on how we collaborated across government, with industry, and that was going to be fundamental to our success. So we've been working really hard at all those three things. We had this year some really reassuring results through our staff census, which showed some significant increases in the things that we most wanted to make a change in. And I just want to highlight two of those before I stop. The first was in people's pride to work in Home Affairs, which had risen a massive 12 percentage points in the 12-month period between the two surveys. That's important not just because we want people to feel good about their workplace. It's important so that we can attract and retain absolutely the best people from across the Commonwealth, from across the broader economy. And Home Affairs had a reputation as not being a great place to work. We needed to bust that, and I think we're starting to do that. The other was an even bigger uptick, and that was about people's confidence that they would be supported, that we understood as an organisation that failure was a really important part of innovation. We chatted before, just before we came on, about how willing the public service is as a whole to embrace risk, to take risk. There is no way that we can tackle the kind of challenges that you outlined unless we are prepared to lean into things which are scary and dangerous and to fail at them and to pick ourselves up and have another go. If we take safe options every time, our adversaries will outpace us every time. So we are creating a culture that people want to join. We're creating a culture where they can be creative and innovative, and I think that will stand us in hugely good stead.
Thanks, Stephanie. That is excellent in terms of some of those factors for success. I do think some of those phrases that you mentioned really important for us. Of course, first priority government is for the public to be safe, but they also need to feel safe. Your census that you talked about fascinates me. I think obviously a number of both those elements are good. I know slightly differently, a slightly different topic. We had Roman talking this morning with Dave, one of the people who was signed onto a letter to say we really should pause work on superintelligence. I'm one of those people who thinks that if we pause, life will still go on, and that we have to be able to do multiple things at once. One of them being the risk of failure, so long as you are willing to identify failure and not be so defensive. So that's an excellent stat. So those three elements that you set out in terms of how what those success factors are, the exemplary leadership, knowing your game-changing agenda, and collaboration, unity. Can you tell us, which all makes perfect sense, you don't just run one of the largest departments, but you are part of a group of secretaries who are in charge of multiple departments. So how do you get all those things done? How do you ensure those three and other success factors are achieved in the public service when there is such a wide range of stakeholders involved in national security?
So that's both an opportunity and a challenge. Having a lot of friends and colleagues means that when we are working as a system, we can do anything. Obviously, it brings challenges in making sure that we are working as a system. Before I go to the way we work together as colleagues, I want to just make a quick comment about the authorising environment in which we operate and the relationships that public servants have with their ministers. Because that, I think, is one of the most critical factors to actually getting things done in government. We can be fantastic at a bureaucratic level, but if we can't influence the direction of government policy, and if we don't have the trust of the ministers that we serve to take our advice, if we're not framing our policy options in ways that are politically palatable, then we're not doing our job. And that responsibility lies very particularly with the senior people in organisations, with me, with my deputies. And so one of the success factors for us in Home Affairs is building on and nurturing that relationship with our minister, who does indeed invest very significant trust and confidence in us. In terms of the portfolio and the national security community, one of the best things about having the Home Affairs portfolio back together again in perhaps a little more than its former glory is that we're no longer talking about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. There's no existential discussions going on because our job is too important for us to be distracted with discussion about whether we should exist or not. We are, and that's sort of off the agenda now, which is fantastic. But on a practical level, having the heads of AUSTRAC, AFP, ASIO and ACIC and the Secretary of Home Affairs working together to the same minister is transformative. It means our capacity to present a multifaceted and coordinated, coherent approach to the challenges which I won't re-articulate, which Mike Burgess does so well, which Heather Cook did so well in her recent address at the National Security College. It means that we are not distracted by organisational considerations. We can just get on with the job, and that's been absolutely fantastic. Similarly, with the broader group of national security colleagues, it's, I think, one of the most effective groupings in government is the way the national security community works together. And I think often it's because our mission is actually very, very clear. Even when we talk about an uncertain world, we know enough about the threats, the way they're evolving, the way they're converging, the kind of things we're going to face into the future, to know that we must work together as a community, and that works pretty well. We've pulled together a grouping in the last 18 months or so called the Protective Security Board, which is the heads of ASIO, AFP, ONI, Defence. Forgive me, colleagues, if I've forgotten anyone off the list. And that's been an incredibly powerful, relatively informal mechanism for us to think about the threats to our security and to come up with co-designed solutions. So all of the PSPF directions, for example, that we've issued have come through there. The decision to ban DeepSeek comes through that mechanism.
Good one, by the way.
It was a great one, yes. We didn't actually agonise about that too much. But it meant that that decision was informed by, ASD was probably the agency head I forgot to mention, by all of those considerations. So it's working pretty well. Just very quickly, the other two big groups that it's critical that are success factors for how well we do. One is our relationship with central agencies. If we can't get support for the policies we're putting forward, if we can't get the budget for them, then all of our great work, people thinking, is for naught. And then finally, industry. And the relationships we have with industry, I think, are second to none and are the envy of our international partners. The fact that we sit down with all of the managers of the critical infrastructure in Australia and have open, frank discussions about what the risks and the threats are and co-design the solutions to them, we don't see happen anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I think, Stephanie, that the fact that we do live in an uncertain world, it definitely helps that your existence is certain. So no doubt it is very helpful for you to be able to do what you need to do without having to wonder whether that whether the department is going to exist. So that is excellent. My bias is I think the department is vitally important, the role that you play. It's interesting you talk about the responsibility that you have, Secretary, your senior staff in all of this. You mentioned Mike Burgess. He often will admit in his public speeches that a lot of what he does is to attract the talent that he needs. So what do you look for then, if the responsibility is yours and your senior staff leaders? What do you look for in national security leaders in the staff? How have you approached it?
So I talked before about exemplary leadership and collaboration. For me, they're not buzzwords. So my senior execs who are here with me will testify that every time someone proposes someone to join our senior leadership cohort and tries to sell me how technically fabulous they are, my only question is, how are they with people? How are they with stakeholders? Will they build the kind of culture that will allow us to continue to attract the very best people? And so that human decency, focus on people, genuine care for people, is one of the things that I look for in my leadership team, but in fact throughout my organisation. I often laugh and think I put all this investment into the top 200 and then there are 15,500 people out there that we've got to touch and reach. But if we don't get it right at the senior leadership level, we'll never get it right through the organisation. And then that capacity to genuinely work together so that we are greater than the sum of our parts all the time. So putting those two things to one side, there are about 4 other things which I look for in both my leaders and the staff more broadly across the organisation, but I'm thinking particularly about national security as I speak. The first is a problem-solving mindset. And we spend a lot of time going back to first principles and saying exactly what is the problem we're trying to solve here, because it's really easy to jump to solutions that sound sexy or attractive or that we can do without bringing ourselves back in that first principle way. We spend a lot of time with groups of staff just spitballing about what actually might be coming at us and what are all the levers we have and who do we need to engage in that endeavour. Brendan Dowling was commenting to me earlier that he finds it unusual and positive that those sessions are not hierarchical, and they're very open in terms of contest of ideas, and we have to be to tackle some of the wicked problems. The second thing is really, really highly developed engagement skills. It's, in my view, in our world, there's no point fostering individual excellence at the cost of bringing the whole system with us, and so we've got to have people who can do that. The third, unsurprisingly, is about curiosity and openness. The willingness to think about what might be rather than what do I know, what am I grounded in. And then finally, persistence and resilience. Often there is no solution to the things that we're trying to deal with. We can only take an initial step into that space. We can't know where the technology is going to go or where the malevolent actor is going to strike next, but we can stick at the problem as it comes at us, and that sort of takes me back to the quality of our people. We can't plan for everything in this world, but if we've got super bright, open, curious, collaborative, engaging people, then they will pivot and flex to whatever challenge comes at us.
Fair enough. And I think, Stephanie, apart from you describing the types of leaders you're after, I think your statement there of, first of all, needing to know what the problem is, I think for those in the room who are listening to Daisy and Roman this morning, or indeed Helen and her panel, I think they've presented many, many problems. So I think they're clear on the problems and what might occur. So good luck to you and your great leaders in finding those solutions. So then, apart from the staff, apart from the senior leadership, your colleagues across the senior leadership group of secretaries, ministers, all importantly, the public, as you said, that it's everything you are doing from a policy perspective is trying to ensure they are safe, also that they feel safe. So then, what role do you see for you and national security leaders in engaging with the public, given in the tech age, they can get access to basically everything. They can see the threats that face them. So what do you see your role in engaging with them?
So there are many uncomfortable moments in this job, and one of them is confronting the fact that there isn't an option for us not to be out there and not to be talking about these issues. And today is an example of that. I grew up in a world where it was really the province of the elected officials to engage with the public, and God help any public servant who got between a minister and his or her electorate. But there is absolutely a need in this very complex and very technical world for technical experts to be engaging and making sense of what's happening in our world to the public. The sort of analogy I think of is we've always been comfortable with public health officials giving information to the public. We need to have the same confidence and to engage with the risk that entails to do that. Some terrific examples. Perhaps the most prominent is the role that Lieutenant General Michelle McGuinness plays as the National Cybersecurity Coordinator. She is constantly doing public engagements to reassure in the event of an attack, but more importantly, to educate, to raise awareness, to make sure that we're activating every element of the public in this cybersecurity fight, which is a bit of a knife fight, really. And it takes everything from the sort of high-level policy discussions that we'll have in an organisation like ours, the ways that the big businesses are securing their infrastructure, their systems, through to the discussion that's happening between mum, dad and the kids at the kitchen table about how to keep themselves safe. You'll be familiar with our Act Now, Stay Secure campaign, just pushing out 3 really simple messages to every Australian about the role that they can play, helping translate the mechanisms that big businesses can use into our small and medium businesses, who are probably the most vulnerable in our system, so that really it's a whole of society approach to a problem that no one entity and certainly government can't solve. So that willingness to get out there. Hamish Hansford, my head of national security, Brendan Kira and their teams are out at conferences with industry groups all the time, trying to not just raise awareness, but to build that sense of partnership.
I think that engagement is crucial. For me, one of the success stories of public engagement is the terror threat level that we have, that has allowed a wonderful balance between keeping people alert to the reality that we do have the risk of terrorism, but then we're resilient to the fact that what we have to do to prepare for it. I've already gone over time with you, Stephanie, but I think if I could ask one final question before I'm holding people back from lunch, but given there are so many members of industry in the room, so many people who in civil society who might not be so, might not have experience with the public service or how the public service works, I think has been really valuable for your inside insights on that. And given there's so much talk about artificial intelligence here at this year's conference, are you able to quickly leave us and the audience with a sense of how the department's dealing with artificial intelligence as a large organisation?
Absolutely. So the question for us is not if we do this, it's how and when. And there are 2 aspects which are equally important. The first is how we embrace all of the benefits of artificial intelligence in our workforce. We have a lot of functions which lend themselves to benefiting from that use. Our challenge is that a lot of our information is very sensitive, either from a national security perspective or from a privacy perspective. And so we have quite consciously adopted a philosophy of being a fast follower, so that we can learn from the experiences of colleagues who are implementing this and put appropriate guardrails in place so that we are not risking public confidence in our functions by misuse of sensitive information. And so we did a trial with Copilot on our protected network. We're now rolling out Copilot Chat to the entire workforce, again in our protected network, so that they can get the skills and confidence in a safe system as we then look at how we can make publicly available generative AI tools like Claude and ChatGPT available to them. Of course, as you would expect with a bunch of bright people, I keep finding pockets across the organisation who are already doing amazing things safely and well with AI products. The other thing which is critically important for us is the use of AI by malevolent actors to attack us in the various ways that they can, which is another reason why we are so committed to how and when, not if.
Yeah.
And we will never tackle the challenge of AI-assisted radicalisation of our youth online, or foreign interference, or any of the sort of national security challenges we have, unless we're fighting back with AI-enabled responses. That's a very challenging but super exciting part of our work.
Fabulous. It's a great way to end. I think most people in the room would agree with the need to fight back. And the other element that you've left me with, hopefully the room, is you've referenced in almost all of your answers confidence and trust. Confidence, the need for that confidence and trust between minister and department, the confidence that you need to have in your staff, the confidence of the leadership across the national security community, government with industry, trust, so vital, and with the public. So thank you, Stephanie Foster, Secretary of Home Affairs. It's a very challenging role. Good luck to you. Hopefully it's been interesting for the audience to hear a bit more of that policy side and organisational side to the national security field. But thank you very much.
It's my absolute pleasure, and for any of you who want to join us, this is an open invitation.